Good afternoon, Louisiana. Welcome to the Fantasy Roundup on this Tuesday, June the 14th. I'm Zach Ewing. To my right is Spencer the Guru Urquhart. We are here for an early, I guess it's still early summer. Meteorologically speaking, it is not even summer yet. So I guess a late spring fantasy update. We're going to talk some fantasy football. We're going to talk some U.S. Open fantasy golf, and we'll check in with fantasy baseball as well. Spencer, how many drafts have you done already for the 2022 season? And if you haven't done any, when is your first one?
Well, I'm actually in the middle of one right now, Zach. A dynasty startup that we started back in May. It's a deep league. It's like over 50 rounds. So we've been drafting now for almost a month. We're wrapping it up, and we're starting another one with a lot of the same guys this week. And so then it wrapped up with those, and then my redraft league. So I think my first redraft is in the mid to late part of July.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't like doing them too early. I understand the dynasty you have to, because you just never know, injuries, suspensions, things like that. And we'll get to some of that, how you deal with different guys as you start to do your research for your draft. But you do hear about some redraft leagues starting in like around the 4th of July. It does start that early, and so we're trying to get ahead of it. We're still 2-3 weeks away from that. But as I mentioned, also some fantasy golf and baseball to talk to. And we're all kind of taking some trips over the next couple of weeks, so a good time to get together. And before we get started, just want to remind everyone that we are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. And if you haven't signed up yet, it's a great time to do it. They have a new promo for this month. It's a good one. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars to sign up, and you can bet up to $1,500 risk-free on your first bet. So whatever you feel comfortable making your bankroll for your betting account, whether it's $100, $200, or up to $1,500, you can bet it all on that first bet. And if you win, you just doubled what your bankroll was. If you lose, you get all that money back to bet again. So it's a good deal. Check it out. NOLA.com/Caesars. We'll tell them that we sent you, and we appreciate that, all the new signups. All right, let's get into some fantasy football now. Spencer, what we asked you to do was do your positional rankings. Again, this is not dynasty. This is not keepers, anything like that. This is just for the 2022 season at each position. And we did top 12s thinking, okay, basically one of these guys on average will land on each team in a 12-team league. So here we go with the running backs first, the bread and butter of fantasy football, if you will. No surprise, you've got Jonathan Taylor at the top. He was amazing. There are a few other surprises, at least for me here. I mean, Harris versus Eckler versus McCaffrey, pretty close call for 2. You went with Najee Harris. Derrick Henry down at number 7. And then let's talk about these top 8, and then I'm going to ask you about the bottom 4, because all sorts of question marks around those guys.
Yeah, for sure, man. The running back situation it's the usual. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to predict. And if you spend the first rounder on the running back, it's always somewhat risky. But a lot of times you got to do it because it's the position with the most upside. So, yeah, Jonathan Taylor, if you get the 101 pick, don't overthink it. Definitely take JT. And then number 2, it's a close call, like you said, between Najee, Eckler, and CMC. I'm giving the edge to Najee, though. I'm thinking he'll do even better this year as far as a runner. You know, he might not catch quite as many passes because with no more Big Ben, I don't think he'll see all those check downs as a Big Ben with the declining arm strength. It was just, that's all he could do basically, was check it down. So Najee should see more running, though. The offense, I think, will be a little more open with Mitchell Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. But defenses have to respect the deep ball more. So I'm thinking Najee will see more running lanes. Eckler, I went with him over McCaffrey slightly because it's just McCaffrey's so injury prone. I mean, the past 2 years he's played less than half the game, so the injuries are really piling up for CMC, and it's concerning. I mean, it's still a first rounder because when he's on the field, he's right up there with Jonathan Taylor. But same thing with Dalvin Cook. He's another one that's, when he's out there, he's amazing, but he gets banged up a lot. And then Deandre Swift, I know Deandre Swift over Derrick Henry sounds crazy to a lot of y'all watching, I'm sure, because Derrick Henry, if I think he's the king, he's the big dog. But I'm thinking this is the year Derrick Henry loses a step. You know, he's coming off a foot injury to where I don't think he's going to be quite the same. I'm concerned about the King Henry. I think he could still be a solid RB1, but the days of him being that top 2 to 3 runner, I think are over.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, running backs have a shelf life. They all do. And I remember saying last year, I don't think I'm going to draft Derrick Henry because I, like you said, at some point he's got to expire. And the first half of last year, I mean, look, he was his dominant self. Then he did have the injury. Sometimes injuries beget injuries. That's like what you were talking about with McCaffrey. I mean, you have one injury. Eckler has been injured. All of these guys, I guess, except for Jonathan Taylor, Deandre Swift, maybe Joe Mixon to an extent has stayed pretty healthy. The younger guys tend to stay healthy as you get on in your career as a running back. You start to have some injury problems. So let's talk about the bottom 4 here because there's question marks with all of them. Javonte Williams, Nick Chubb, you don't know exactly what the timeshare situation is going to be like there. I love Javonte Williams too. But they both have other backs in those cities who could take away carries. And then Saquon Barkley, it's a big injury a big injury concern as well. And then Alvin Kamara. Spencer, did you split the difference here? If you knew he wasn't going to be suspended, maybe he'd be higher. If you knew he was, he'd be lower. I mean, I don't know what you do with Alvin Kamara at this point, not knowing what's going to happen from that assault charge in Las Vegas.
Right. Yeah, that's basically what I did because we don't really know how, like, if he'll get suspended or how long. I think he will, but I mean, it's just, I mean, we don't know yet. So I still think if you have to draft right now, I think he's still worth taking in like the late second, early third. Because even if he does get suspended, I don't think it'll be anything like 8 games or a full season. I don't think he's not in as bad a shape as Deshaun Watson. So I'm thinking he's still worth an early pick. And because another thing, if he gets suspended, if he misses those games, it might help him be able to stay healthy throughout the season because we know he's had his nicks and bruises throughout his tenure with the Saints, where he usually misses 2 or 3 games a year. So if he would get suspended, well, hopefully that could help preserve him while he's eligible to play. And so I think he's still worth an early pick. And then Javonte, I really like. I wish I could rank him higher, but Melvin Gordon back, it definitely is going to take away some from his touches, but I think he'll still see enough to be a second round pick for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Kamara is he is going to get suspended. I don't think there's any denying that. His court date's already been pushed twice back to August. If it gets pushed back again, like let's say it's in October, I mean, there's a chance that he doesn't get suspended until the end of the year. I mean, that would be bad for the Saints. You don't want to lose him for the most important games. Could it even potentially not happen until the 2023 season? I mean, it's possible. I think he'll get suspended. There is a chance it won't happen for quite a while. And so that's an interesting one. I mean, I think you kind of wait until you see the value. For me, chances are somebody else grabs him before I'm willing to take that risk. I took Michael Thomas last year in the 6th or 7th round, thinking I got a real good deal when he's healthy after 6 games. I mean, this is money in the bank. I got my number 2 wide receiver. Never came back. It was a waste of a 6th round pick. And so I'm not saying that will be the case with Kamara, but taking these risks in drafts, especially in the first 6 or 8 rounds, man, it can be deadly.
Yeah, he got to be calculated with it. You don't want to take like more than 1 or 2 swings in the early rounds. You want most of your early round picks to be those money in the bank type picks. Yeah, if you whiff on like 3 or 4 of your first 6 picks, you're probably not even going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, my baseball team right now, I had Fernando Tatis Jr. as a keeper, and I still decided to keep him, which I think is okay because it's not obviously he's out half the year, but I get him for next year too, and so hey, it's worth.
Oh yeah, you got to keep him.
But
yeah.
I doubled down. I made the mistake of drafting Jacob deGrom and Jack Flaherty. So now we have four IL spots in that league, and 3 of them are taken for half the season. And then I also drafted Max Scherzer. So there's 4. I mean, and anybody else who gets hurt, I have no spot for him. And so that's one of those cases where, I rolled the dice and it just didn't work out. So let's move on. Let's move on to quarterbacks here. The top 12 quarterbacks in Spencer the Guru's rankings. Josh Allen, I think he had kind of surpassed Patrick Mahomes as number 1 last year, Spencer, and he did nothing to dissuade that opinion. But you also have Justin Herbert ahead of Mahomes.
Right. Yeah, I think it's time to move Mahomes down a little bit because they traded away Tyreek Hill, his go-to weapon. I know they still got Travis Kelce, so he'll still be an elite quarterback, and they got some new weapons there with Sky Moore, a rookie, a Juju, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but none of those guys are Tyreek Hill. So I'm thinking Mahomes' stats will dip just a little bit. And Herbert's just gotten better and better, man. He just gets better. So I'm thinking year 3 for him. A lot of times year 3 is the year quarterbacks tend to have amazing years. So I'm thinking he'll have another great year, be a potential MVP candidate, as well as Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow being his 3rd year. Hopefully that knee's healthy, and if he's healthy, he's right up there with those guys. And then Lamar Jackson, another one that has that elite upside. If he can stay healthy, he's probably going to be running more this year, which makes him risky, but I'd be willing to take the chance if the value's right. And then Kyler Murray, a lot of people have Kyler over Lamar, but I'm personally going with Lamar because with DeAndre Hopkins suspended and Murray not running as much last season has me a little bit concerned.
Yeah, I mean, these running quarterbacks are absolutely great, but they also, we talk about injuries. They tend to get hurt more. If you play a team where the running game dries up, all of a sudden Lamar Jackson's got to throw. Is he going to throw for a bunch of yards and touchdowns? No, he's not. So you kind of have these peaks and valleys throughout the season. So it is interesting. And again, as we get toward the bottom of this list, Tom Brady. We talk about a guy who's been productive, but again, the age. Russell Wilson in a new location, wasn't quite as productive last year, had an injury. And then we have Trey Lance at number 12, Spencer. Trey Lance not even guaranteed to be the starter in San Francisco, but you see a lot of upside there.
Yeah, I sure do. And I've had a lot of people tell me I'm crazy for having him here instead of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers being the defending MVP, surefire QB1. But I'm thinking Aaron Rodgers' stats drop off this year with no more Devontae Adams. That's going to really hurt him statistically, I feel like. I mean, I still think Green Bay's probably the favorite to win the division as they have a good defense and a really good running game. But for fantasy purposes, that's not good for Aaron Rodgers because it's probably going to be less yards, less touchdowns, just less everything. And he's at an age where he doesn't run much anymore. So Trey Lance is the guy that I'd rather take a chance on him because he's somebody that, assuming he wins the job, is going to get a ton of rushing yards. It's a good system with a lot of weapons, Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle. So he'll be in the perfect system for immediate success there in San Francisco. It'll just be a matter of how consistent he'll be. And
Charles says, "Don't speak of Tom Brady." I'm not sure.
I had him in the rankings. He's 8th. I mean, I can give my take on Brady.
I'm not sure what you mean there, Charles.
I guess he meant that we skipped him or whatever because we've kind of moved on to Lance. But I mean, I had Brady 8th. I still think Brady. I'll say this: I'd much prefer Brady over Rodgers because with Brady, they're going to throw so much in Tampa Bay. That's a throw first team there, even with no more Bruce Arians. I still think with Byron Leftwich is the OC, it's an air raid there. I mean, Leonard Fournette is a solid running back, but he's not the focal point there. It's Brady in the passing game, and then Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Gronk's probably back, so they've still got plenty of weapons. Russell Gage got added, but him and Jalen Hurts are pretty close for me. I went with Hurts though because Hurts has added weapons there with AJ Brown coming to town in Philly, and he runs so much. I mean, he was actually, with Lamar getting injured last year, Hurts was the most prolific rushing quarterback. He wasn't a great passer, but a great runner. If he can improve as a passer, he could be a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah, and please, guys, drop in the comments. Charles, tell us where you take Brady among quarterbacks. We're just talking fantasy. This is not a Saints versus Bucks thing. And if you got questions for Spencer, drop them in the comments. If you think he's crazy, if you think he's right, let us know. Moving on to wide receivers, becoming more important. I'll tell you what, every league is a PPR now. You got to have those wide receivers. Justin Jefferson at number 1.
Yep. Yeah, we went bold there with Jets Jefferson at number 1. Most people have Cooper Kupp. But I went with Jefferson because I feel like when you're coming off a historic season like Kupp had, it's almost, you can almost never repeat it. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like Kupp is just, he's going to regress to some degree. He's still elite. He's still worth taking up high. But I think Jefferson's the guy that's going to take the big step forward this year with Kevin O'Connell as a new head coach in Minnesota. They're definitely going to throw the ball more. and Jefferson's going to be a huge beneficiary of that. And then Jamar Chase right up there with him, but he also got T. Higgins in the top 10. So I'm thinking Cincinnati throws a lot, but I don't think it'll be quite enough volume for Chase to be up there with Kupp and Jefferson. And then Devontae Adams still in the mix too. I know he's going from Green Bay to Vegas, but Derek Carr is legit. I mean, he's not quite on Aaron Rodgers level, but he's not too far behind. He's a debatable top 10 to 12 quarterback. So I'm thinking that Adams, and they had the chemistry back when they were playing together at Fresno State. Adams in their last year together in college, he caught 24 touchdowns. So I think they'll be able to rekindle that magic, and Devontae will still be an elite WR1.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this, and those who watch our shows know I have a long relationship with Derek Carr going back to when I covered him in high school. And he does have a tendency to, I don't want to say fixate, but he's got receivers he likes, right? I mean, he will target them, and he's not shy about targeting them. You mentioned Devontae Adams at Fresno State. In Oakland, when the Raiders were in Oakland, it was Amari Cooper who got a bunch of targets. We've seen it in Las Vegas. Darren Waller getting a bunch of targets, and then Hunter Renfrow getting a bunch of targets. I mean, and so he has these guys where, look, if you're open and you're consistently getting open, you're going to get 10, 12 targets a game. And Devontae Adams with 10 or 12 targets a game, look out. I mean, you could see some big business there. And I think there is this narrative, Spencer, that, he left Aaron Rodgers, you got to downgrade him. I'm not so sure that you do. But
right.
As we move down this list, Tyreek Hill in Miami, what do you think there? We had the infamous video where Tua bombed to Tyreek Hill and he underthrew it, and Hill had to sit there and wait for it like it was a punt. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Tua has thrown better balls than that. It was just funny they chose to highlight that one. But what do you make of Tyreek in Miami?
Yeah, I still think Tyreek will be a WR1. It's a little more. He doesn't have the ceiling, like he will in Kansas City, because I think he's going to be more of a yak yards guy. You have to get more yards after the catch, because he's not going to be a big field stretching offense like he was in Kansas City, because Tua just, ever since he had the devastating hip injury, he just hadn't seemed to be the same as far as airing it out deep like he did with Alabama. So, I mean, he's a few years removed from that now, so he might be a little better in that regard at this point, but I still don't think he's anywhere near Patrick Mahomes. So definitely going to hurt Tyreek Hill more so than Devontae Adams going from Rodgers to Carr. Mahomes to Tua, that's a big downgrade, no doubt. But I still think Hill, as talented as he is, as fast as he is, he'll still crack the top 10 of 10 for sure. And then he has top 5 upside still on any given Sunday.
Mark, you were right about that. Tua is not Mahomes. I don't think anybody's going to confuse those two. So
100%. Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, Tyreek, one of the things about Tyreek is he gets the ball in his hands, even if you throw him a little 7-yard slant, and he could be gone. So,
exactly,
I mean, he can make those big plays.
Yeah,
whether he's got the quarterback. Yeah, that's exactly right. Whether he's got the quarterback to throw him 50 air yards or not, he can still be very valuable. Let's talk some tight ends. This is our last position group, Spencer's top 12 here on the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com. Top 2, I think you will not get very many arguments there. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, both had big years last year. Kyle Pitts, number 3. I love Kyle Pitts. A little surprised you put him ahead of Kittle, but talk about that decision.
Okay, yeah, Kittle, it's just too many injuries. Just one thing after another with Kittle. I kind of had Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey bumped down. Kittle's the same thing. I mean, he's just a guy that he's just not reliable to play all 17 games. If you draft Kittle, you're basically bracing yourself that you're gonna be without him for at least 3 to 4 games, or you're gonna probably have to take a second tight end at the end of the draft. Or if you take one of those top 3, Kelce, Andrews, or Pitts, to me, you don't even need a backup tight end at that point. Just roll with them all year and just pick one up whenever they're on bye week. Or Pitts is like, I know he didn't have the touchdowns last year, but I think that was kind of a fluke. I think he's too big. He's too big not to get more touchdowns. I think he only had like 2 or something. That's going to go up to at least 6 to 8 this year. And he had the catches and yards. He had the volume. He just needed the touchdowns. I thought it would have been the opposite, if anything, that he'd had the touchdowns. But when Calvin Ridley went out, he was kind of forced into a major role there. And so I'm thinking he'll continue to build upon that, but not quite up there with Kelce and Andrews. They're still the big dogs at the position.
And as you get further down this list, I mean, tight ends the spot where, it used to be. I mean, even as little as 2 years ago, if you didn't get one of the top three guys, you were in trouble. You were kind of dumpster diving or looking for streamers. That's not as much the case last season and then this season. It's deeper. I mean, Darren Waller at number 7, TJ Hawkinson, Dallas Goedert had a productive year. Pat Freiermuth of Pittsburgh was good most weeks. Rob Gronkowski, how about that one? Hasn't signed yet, and I mean, maybe this is similar as Kamara, Spencer, where you kind of split the difference. If he actually comes back, draft him a little bit higher than that. Obviously, if he doesn't, you're not going to draft him at all.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking he comes back. I mean, he's Brady's boy. Brady needs him back. He's gonna come back. I'm not worried about Gronk. I'm thinking he's still back in tight end 1. He's another one though. He's injury prone at being. He's old at this point, so he's probably be his last year if I had to guess. But I mean, you never know if Brady wants to keep running it back. But yeah, for fantasy, he's don't reach on him because of his name, but he's also though don't ignore him if you have an early draft just because he's a free agent right now. Don't let him slip too far because of that, because I definitely think he's coming back.
All right, Mark says, how is Waller 7? He has Adams, Renfro, and Demarcus Robinson. I guess the question is, and I like Waller also. I probably like him better than 7. But the question mark is, who do you put him ahead of? And Spencer, how seriously did you think about ranking Waller higher?
Well, yeah, Mark actually, to me, validates my argument for why I have Waller low, because he's not gonna see the volume that he used to with Devontae there. That's gonna take away a lot of the targets that generally would go to Waller. So I mean, Waller's still a solid option there, no doubt. I mean, he's one of the few tight ends you can depend on. But as far as him being an elite tight end 1 like he was, there's no way he's gonna be top 3. It's just, I mean, Devontae there and Hunter Renfrow both commanding a high target market share in Vegas. There's only so much to go around. So, I mean, if Waller's top 3 and Devontae hits and Renfrow hits, well, then damn, I guess I should have Derek Carr in my top 5 quarterbacks, because if all of them do that, then, man, Carr's going to be in for a huge year.
And by the way, Derek Carr did lead the NFL in passing yards after like 6 weeks last year, and then it slowed down after that. But he is capable of these big games. I would say this. I don't know if Waller is top 3, but he has proven, especially in a PPR, he gets a lot of targets. I like Mark. I do like Mark sticking out on a limb, though. I like that, because this is the great thing about fantasy is one guy can see Darren Waller as the 3rd tight end. The other can see him as number 7. And guess what? If y'all are in a league together, somebody's going to get a bargain out of it, and somebody else isn't. So,
yeah.
And Mark says, yeah, you should have Derek Carr that high. So there's another. I like that.
Yeah, and I like Derek Carr. Actually, in that dynasty startup I was talking about, I made a trade because I had Herbert. Herbert was my first pick, and then they had a huge quarterback run, and to where I actually traded up into the beginning part of the 3rd round to get Derek Carr, because after him, I felt like there was a huge drop off at the position, because it was just quarterback. Like the whole late 2nd, early 3rd was just all a slew of quarterbacks, and it's super flex, so it's like they were becoming scarce at that point. So I'm pretty pleased with the duo of Herbert and Carr.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, the AFC West is nails.
Yeah.
The Broncos brought in Russell Wilson to win now, and they might, but you brought him into a division where the Chargers are on the rise, the Chiefs are still the Chiefs, and the Raiders. Look, that could be a really good team too. So I don't know. It'll be interesting, and we will do this again next month, and then we're going to start doing it every week like we did during the NFL season, and start to have weekly updates on these rankings and talk about what guys look like in training camp, what they look like in the preseason. So that'll probably start about a month from now, maybe a little bit more than that. But at this point, Spencer, anything in mini camps or OTAs or anything that has caught your eye as far as fantasy football and the repercussions it may have?
Yeah, there are a few things here and there. I mean, the Michael Thomas still not being healthy is very concerning. I know he should be back, but to me, that I'm giving Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry a stock up, because they're getting these valuable reps in with Jameis, to where they're gonna, by the time Mike comes back, Jameis should have a fairly decent rapport with both of them. Like Jarvis already turning heads. Olave, obviously a rookie, it'll take him a little time, but I think both of them will eat into Mike Thomas's targets. So it's no longer going to be the days of Mike catching well over 100 passes. He's going to have to share a workload to where like it's going to be tough to predict who's going to be the top Saints receiver for fantasy, because I think they're all going to have their moments.
This is where what it was Charles Pruitt who said, "Don't speak of Tom Brady Homer analysis." This is where I say, "Hey Spencer, did you notice anything in OTAs?" And we get 2 minutes about the Saints. So
well, I know people like to hear about the Saints. I mean, I could, I mean, I have a few other things I could throw in.
And it's interesting, Spencer. I mean, out of all four of these, we'll go through them real quick. You see, Alvin Kamara at number 11 on running back was the only Saint we have here. Now, the Saints are, listen, Sean Payton's gone. They're coached by a defensive coordinator. They have a great defense. I don't know that the Saints are going to be great for fantasy football this year.
Yeah, speaking of Jameis Winston, for those that play in super flex leagues, I have Jameis as my, where did I have him? I think 18th among quarterbacks. So he's like a mid-range QB2, somebody that's, you can trust him most weeks as your super flex, but definitely don't take him as your QB1, because he's still going to have his games where he's erratic and throws a lot of picks. Probably it's just kind of the nature of his game. He's a gunslinger type, but I'm thinking that, yeah, it's just going to be, I don't think the Saints offense is going to be bad. It's just, I don't think it's not going to be anything like it was in its heyday with Breeze and Peyton. It's just, I mean, there's just a lot of new parts and pieces there to where, and an Armstead gone, it'll be the rookie left tackle most likely. So it's just, I mean, I think it'll be okay. It'll be better than last year, but it's not going to be at an elite level like it used to be.
By the way, the first 11 on 11 snaps of minicamp this morning, James Hurst started at left tackle. So doesn't mean it's going to stay that way, but he did start at left tackle this morning with the ones. Let's see. One more Saints question for you before we move on and do some golf and baseball talk, Spencer. Taysom Hill. I assume he's going to be listed as a tight end again this year. You don't have him listed in your top 12 tight ends. What do we do with Taysom Hill? I don't know, because the reason I ask is because if you put him as your tight end, maybe he does get in on a couple of trick plays, throw a couple of touchdowns during the course of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. It's just not, you're not going to know when it's going to happen. It's a situational thing. It'll be if they exploit a certain matchup, or it'll be anything. It'll be more like a situation, a game situation. A certain play comes up to where he gets in there and makes a big play, or throws a touchdown, or runs in a touchdown. You don't know when that's going to happen. It's way too unpredictable to spend a draft pick on in a redraft league to me. I mean, maybe in a deep dynasty league, you could take a chance on him, maybe have him as a flex if you're in need, just kind of desperate one week. But it's just, he's not going to be consistent enough on a weekly basis to me to warrant any sort of draft capital in normal sized fantasy leagues.
I could see him as a real late round flyer if you want him to be the last guy on your bench, just in case he pops or Pete Carmichael's got something up his sleeve. He's not going to play quarterback. He was never really, well, I say that a couple of years ago, the last 5 weeks or so, he was usable as a quarterback because he was getting the rushing yards.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe a real late round flyer if you like him and you think, because he's talented. Look, he's talented. They're going to find ways to get the ball in his hands. The question is, are we talking 10 times a game or 3 times a game that he's going to get the ball in his hands? So we shall see. You are watching the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com. Zach Ewing along with Spencer, the guru Urquhart. Been talking some fantasy football here. Spencer will have fantasy content on bet.nola.com all summer long. I do want to switch gears a little bit for the rest of this show and talk a little U.S. Open golf, DFS, and then we'll go into baseball as well. We each put together a DFS DraftKings lineup for the U.S. Open. Spencer, here's yours. And again, I mean, look, fantasy is not the same as betting picks, because we're not going to give you exactly who we're going to play, because then you would go play the same thing and neither of us would win because we just tie. You can't have the same thing as everybody else, in other words. So this is just sort of a sample. Spencer, what do you got here?
All right, yeah, I decided to anchor it with Rory McIlroy because he's been playing so well lately. He's this guy that's just hoping he can continue to continue the hot streak. Does really good at the Canadian Open this past week, and so I'm thinking he'll be able to carry that over. And while I don't know if he's going to win it, I mean the U.S. Open's so hard to pick the winner, but I definitely think he'll be in contention to be a solid anchor there. And then Will Zalatoris, he's the guy that Trey Wingo picked yesterday, and I know Trey knows his golf, and he's been playing. He's a younger cat, and he's been playing really good lately. So going with the hot hand, that's how I kind of deal with this lineup. Just kind of going with players that have been playing pretty well lately. Mito, I know he had the meltdown in the PGA, but he's overall been playing good golf. So I felt like he was a solid pick there to go with to fill out the rest of my lineup there with Tommy Fleetwood, Song J M, and Justin Rose there to cap it off.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Mito is, yes, he had the collapse at the PGA. He still finished third in that tournament. If you had him in your DraftKings lineup, you were pretty happy with that. I think you got a lot of good picks here. I do think that lineup will probably be a lot of popular guys, a lot of chalk there. And so maybe for like a double up situation or a smaller tournament, that could work. I don't know if you're going to win the Millie Maker that way. With guys that everybody else is going to pick too, right? You got to pivot. So it depends on which contest you enter, but those are some solid guys for sure. I went a little bit different direction. I tried to take a few guys who might not be as popular. Justin Thomas obviously is going to be popular. He won the PGA Championship. Don't know that you necessarily want to go with him to also win the U.S. Open. It doesn't happen that often. But if there's a guy who could do it, it's JT. He's been playing well, and he's a guy that I like having up there. Hideki Matsuyama, quite frankly, is a little bit overpriced. But because of that, I kind of think his ownership will be low. And so if he does do well, you're going to have something there that nobody else has. Daniel Berger, just a solid golfer, and probably a lot of people will overlook him, but he has potential to do real well. And then my last three guys are all guys who are good drivers of the ball and play well on tough courses. Seamus Power, Gary Woodland, and Luke List. And that's what it takes at the U.S. Open. You got to drive the ball in the fairway, and you got to be able to grind out pars because there are not going to be a lot of birdies on this course, as there never are in a U.S. Open. And so it'll be interesting to see. But we'll compare those two lineups, and maybe when we chat on the Fantasy Roundup here again in a few weeks, we'll go back and see which one of our DFS lineups did better. Drop in the comments. Let us know what you think. Spencer's lineup: McIlroy, Zalatoris, Mito, Fleetwood, Sungjae, and Justin Rose. My lineup: JT, Matsuyama, Daniel Berger, Seamus Power, Woodland, and List. And I will say this: neither one of us, you'll notice, went to any of the 6,000 guys. It's not a tournament where you want to have guys who you're not confident can compete, because that course will chew you apart if you're not an elite golfer. And so the lowest I went was 7,000, and you went to 7,100. So that's about as low as I'm willing to go on a lot of these guys for the U.S. Open.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't want to try to dive too deep there, because if you start having guys that miss the cut, that's what can really kill you in these things. You want to have all 6 of your guys at least make the cut to where they have a chance to make some big moves. And I looked through it, and then all the live golfers are in this. So you think that like some of them could end up being a value, or are you just staying away from them? I think that's just too much of a distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We want to move on and finish up with some fantasy baseball talk here on the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com. Baseball season not quite half over, but we're getting to the point where I think you kind of know what you're dealing with. And so what Spencer has done is come up with a list of 5 guys he's willing to part with, and 5 guys that he is willing to I don't know what that was. Devin
made a random pop in. He wants to give his fantasy baseball takes. Don't be shy, Dev.
Yeah, our producer popped in. I think he accidentally logged in on his phone there. Anyway, if you want to let people know what you are thinking, and here's the thing: guys you want to part with, they have to be playing good. You're not. It's going to seem counterintuitive. Like I don't want to get rid of him. He's my best player. Well, that's when you get the value for these guys. So here's the guys that you are willing to sell at this point, and the name at the top is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I gotta sell Aaron Judge, man. I mean, 24. 24 home runs. That's just, he's not going to be able to sustain that pace. I remember Zachy had mentioned about Ohtani last year about how I believe you had traded him away and how it worked out to where it's just, I mean, he's a great player, but there's just no way he's going to be able to keep up that pace. So I feel like if you got Judge, it's as painful as it would be to trade him at this point. You got to do it because you get so much value in return because he's been the best power hitter in the game. And I just don't think there's any way he can keep that pace up. And then Byron
Yeah, I mean,
Buxton,
Spencer, I'm sorry, Spencer, just to interrupt.
yeah,
He's running, I think I read yesterday, Aaron Judge has a 36% home run fly ball rate. So 36% of every ball he's hit in the air has been a home run. That's just not sustainable. Even for a guy with the power like him who plays in a hitter's park, that's going to have to come down to 25 or 30%, which just means unless he starts hitting a lot more fly balls, all of a sudden he's just not going to keep up this home run pace. Like listen, they've deadened the baseball. He's off to a fantastic start. He's on pace to challenge 60 home runs. I don't think he's going to get there just because he just that rate's going to have to slow down.
Yeah, exactly. And then Byron Buxton's a guy that's just, he's off to the strong start, but he's always injured. I feel like if I've got a guy that's been playing really well, that's got a long injury history, I try and sell him now because before that injury hits, because I feel like at some point Buxton's going to, my hamstring, my this or that. He's just always got something bothering him. Same thing with Carlos Rodon. He's a great pitcher, but he just always, his arm's always barking to where I'm thinking at some point he'll probably go on the IL to where it's like if you can trade these guys, you might as well get someone a little more reliable. And then the last two has nothing to do with injuries. It's just two guys that I think are due to their stats are going to fall off here. Kenley Jansen has just seen an absurd amount of save opportunities recently to where it was like we say about Aaron Judge's home run clip is Kenley Jansen's save chances are going to drop for sure to where he's got like 18 saves right now. I'm thinking that he'll still be all right, but if you can get if you need starting pitch and you can get like an elite starter for him, do that because closers you can find a closer on the waiver wire at pretty much any point because a lot of these bullpens are so turbulent. And then Paul Blackburn with the A's, he's got a great ERA right now, but just for one, he pitches for a bad team, so wins are going to be tough to come by. And just he's a low strikeout rate guy, so it's a lot of times hard for those guys to sustain low ERAs because they don't have that good swing and miss stuff. So a lot of times they can be prone to getting hit hard.
One thing we should say, yes, these are good sell candidates, and we're about to show you some good buy candidates. You still want to get fair value. I mean, don't trade Aaron Judge just because you think he's got 24 home runs in what have they played 65 games. He's going to hit maybe 20 to 25 the rest of the way in 100 games. That doesn't mean that's still valuable, right? Like you still want to get the value that you can. Don't trade him for something that's not elite return. So they're good guys to sell, but you're selling them because their value is high. Sell high, buy low, as we say. So here's your buy low guys. And these are interesting. Like Nick Castellanos has played pretty well, but you see him as a possibility to target here.
Yeah, because his stats just haven't really been where they normally are. He's off to a slow start statistically to where I'd trade for him now before he really picks up the pace. I mean, playing for the Phillies, that's a good lineup, good ballpark. Like he's due to really start raking. And once he does, you're not going to be able to trade for him at that point. So it's kind of like the calm before the storm, once he starts hitting a bunch of home runs and driving in a bunch of runs. Like he's a 30-100 guy. He gets that every year. He's one of the few guys you can count on in baseball. Baseball there's just so few reliable guys, and Castellanos is one of those. So definitely try to get him if you can. Teoscar Hernandez is kind of in the same boat. He's off to a really rough start. The whole Blue Jays lineup is kind of off to a tough start, but they've been picking up lately, and Hernandez is another one to where I think he's established enough to where I wouldn't give up quite as much as I would for Castellanos, but I think I would give up decent amounts still for Hernandez because he's somebody that he actually probably wouldn't even have to give up that much because he's off to a really slow start. A lot of managers are like, what's he got, like 3 home runs? This guy's not that great, probably give him to you for just an okay pitcher or hitter to where then you could have a potential top 10 outfielder for the second half. And then Anthony Rendon was tough. I almost didn't put him because he hadn't really done anything since 2019. But I feel like he's a guy that if he could ever just get healthy and he's gonna hit, because in that lineup there's got so much talent there with Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani leading the way, and he bats behind those guys to where he's gonna have so many RBI opportunities. If he could just get back 100%, this dude's a pure hitter when he's right. So I would be willing to take a chance on him. I wouldn't go give up the world for him because his stats right now are garbage. But that's the whole point of this. You can get them now while their stats look ugly. Exactly. But because once the stats start looking good again, that's when the owner of I'm not giving him up. He's playing good. And the same thing with the two pitchers I put on there. Baz, the young guy for Tampa Bay, had a rough debut, and then Iglesias, the Angels closer, he's at a kind of high ERA right now, but he's so established to where that's going to go back down.
I'll tell you a trade I almost made in one of my leagues last week, Spencer. Mike Trout was in that 0 for, what was it, 22 or 0 for, maybe it was more than that, 0 for 28, whatever it was, and a bunch of them were strikeouts. I mean, he was lost. His timing was totally off at the plate. And I'm thinking, look, Mike Trout is gonna bounce back. He was having a good season before this stretch, but the Angels were on their long losing streak. They had just fired Joe Madden, and I had a trade. There was a couple of other pieces in it, but the main part of it was Starling Marte for Mike Trout, and I had the owner about ready to think about it. And then on the same night, Mike Trout and Starling Marte both leave with pulled muscles, and so the whole thing blew up. And then both of them came back within a couple of days, but now Trout's hitting again, and the guy doesn't want to sell him. So almost got him. But that's the type of deal where, Marte's numbers are almost as good as Trout's. Do you expect that to keep up for 3 more months? I would rather take Trout. I mean, and again, specific situation, my team has plenty of stolen bases. I don't need Marte's speed. And so I was looking for a little more hitting. And so that was part of this deal as well. But anyway, that's a great take. I mean, I think you're always looking for opportunities to buy a guy who's down in the dumps. His numbers aren't good, but you have reason to believe that he'll bounce back. And then vice versa. Aaron Judge is a great example. I'm glad you brought it up because he is the talk of Major League Baseball right now. 24 homers. Is he going to chase Babe Ruth, Roger Maris for the Yankees record? Maybe, no. But there's statistical reason to believe that he's not. Of course, there's statistical reason to believe the Boston Celtics will hit more shots. God dang it. And that hasn't happened either.
No. Go Dubs.
Yeah. Spencer and I on opposite sides of the NBA Finals. Spencer will be on At the Book Thursday afternoon with Jim and Devin. I will be absent from that show so they can talk all the trash about the Celtics they want to. Game 6 of the NBA Finals is that night. So tune in for that, and also check out Jim Derry's Datitude podcast coming out tomorrow morning with a U.S. Open preview, and Friday Saints Talk with Jeff Duncan. And that's it for us, I think. Spencer, any final thoughts?
All right, yeah, I'll say that the DFS golf, Uncle Big Nick, if you listen, and shoot us your lineup too. If you want, I don't know who can top yours, but hey, throw it in, man, because I know Nick's want a lot of cash with doing those DFS deals. He's going to be on the Datitude too, right?
He will be on Datitude tomorrow. And I guarantee you, he's not going to give you the lineup that he's actually playing.
Yeah, true.
Maybe one of them. He's going to
keep that tight to the vest.
He'll play a bunch of them. Maybe he'll give you one of them. But
yeah, I know he spreads. He's spread all over.
Yeah,
with those. Yeah,
that's it. Fantasy golf. It's a good week to get into it. Give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. Makes watching those tournaments a lot of fun. And in the meantime, if you have not signed up yet, sign up for the Caesar Sportsbook app, and your first bet is risk-free up to $1,500. You get all of that bankroll back. If you lose your first bet, go to NOLA.com/Caesars to sign up. With that said, for our producer, Devin Jackson, and for Spencer the Guru Urquhart, I'm Zach Ewing. This has been the Fantasy Roundup on Bet.NOLA.com. Have a good one.